I stare at the bank statement showing zero balance where my life's work should be, my hands trembling so violently that the paper rustles like autumn leaves in a death wind, and Sarah's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, sits across from me in his mahogany-paneled office with that practiced expression of false sympathy that lawyers perfect when they're about to deliver the killing blow to someone's entire existence. Mr. Chen, I understand your shock, but as we discussed during the proceedings, your ex-wife had legal right to redirect pension funds for family obligations, specifically for the welfare of dependent children under her care, he says in that measured tone that makes my blood turn to ice water in my veins, because I know what's coming next. I can see it in his calculating eyes that have probably delivered this same news to dozens of broken men before me. But those aren't her children, I manage to whisper, my voice cracking like I'm 15 again instead of 52, and dying in this fluorescent-lit office that smells of leather and destroyed dreams. Those are Marcus's kids from his previous relationships. 3 children who never even knew my name before Sarah decided to play stepmother with my money, my pension, my entire life's work that I spent 27 years building one overtime shift at a time. The lawyer adjusts his glasses and pulls out another folder, this one thicker than the first. And I already know it contains more documents that will explain how my ex-wife legally stole my future to fund her new boyfriend's child support obligations, how she turned my decades of 60-hour work weeks into payments for another man's responsibilities, how the judge ruled that since Sarah had taken on the role of stepmother to Marcus's children, my pension funds could be considered marital assets subject to reallocation for dependent welfare. The room spins around me like I'm drunk, but I haven't touched alcohol in 3 years, not since the stroke that left my right side partially paralyzed and my speech slightly slurred, not since I realized that stress and overwork had stolen my health just as surely as Sarah had stolen my money. And I think about Marcus Delacroix with his charming smile and his nurse scrubs and his 3 children from 3 different women, all of whom he'd left when child support became too burdensome, all of whom Sarah now supports with money that came from my broken body and my destroyed dreams. The court determined that your ex-wife's commitment to providing stability for these children superseded your claim to individual retirement assets, Henderson continues, his voice fading in and out like a bad radio signal. And given that you have no minor dependents, and your children are both adults who've expressed support for their mother's new family situation, the judge felt this was the most equitable distribution of marital assets. I want to laugh, but the sound that comes out is more like a sob, because equity means that Sarah gets to play mother to Marcus's abandoned children, while my own son and daughter have barely spoken to me since the divorce, believing their mother's carefully crafted narrative that I abandoned the family for selfish reasons, that I chose work over family, that I left them struggling while I lived comfortably in my small apartment surviving on the minimum social security benefits that barely cover my medications. The truth is so much more complicated and painful than their simplified story. The truth is that I worked those overtime hours to pay for Sarah's nursing school, to save for their college funds, to build the life that Sarah now shares with Marcus in the house that I bought with my sweat and my hope and my naive belief that loving someone meant giving them everything you had, even when they stopped loving you back somewhere along the way. Mr. Chen, are you all right? Henderson's voice sounds like it's coming from underwater, and I realize I've been staring at the statement for several minutes without breathing properly, my chest tight with the kind of panic that comes when you realize your entire life has been built on a foundation of other people's lies and your own willful blindness. I think about the last 20 years of my marriage to Sarah, my high school sweetheart who used to trace my engineering textbooks with her finger and tell me I was going to build something amazing someday, who supported me through college and early career struggles, and who I supported through nursing school and career changes, and who gradually grew distant and cold in ways I attributed to work stress and middle-age challenges rather than the affair she was having with Marcus, the physician assistant who worked in her department and who saw my successful, dedicated wife as the perfect solution to his child support problems. The marriage fell apart so slowly that I didn't notice the individual moments of disconnection. The way Sarah stopped asking about my projects at work, the way she started working longer shifts and weekend overtime that never seemed to appear on her paychecks, the way she became irritated when I wanted to spend time together and started suggesting I find more hobbies or friends to occupy my time, the way our conversations became purely logistical discussions about bills and schedules and household maintenance without any of the warmth or intimacy that had sustained us through 2 decades of building a life together. I was so focused on my work, on the engineering projects that required precision and attention to detail, on providing for our family and saving for retirement and planning for a future that I thought we'd share together, that I missed the signs of her affair until she filed for divorce and moved Marcus into our house before the papers were even finalized. The divorce proceedings destroyed me in ways I'm still understanding 3 years later, because Sarah's lawyer painted me as an absent workaholic who prioritized career over family, who left his wife emotionally neglected and struggling to maintain their household alone, who needed to pay the price for years of emotional abandonment through financial compensation that would allow Sarah to rebuild her life with someone who truly appreciated her. I gave her everything she asked for because I felt guilty about the failed marriage, because I wanted our children to maintain stability and relationship with their mother, because I thought keeping my pension was fair compensation for losing my home and my family and my entire understanding of who I was as a husband and father. I was naive enough to believe that my pension was protected, that 27 years of contributing to retirement accounts and building financial security couldn't be touched by divorce proceedings, that there was some justice in allowing a man to keep the money he'd earned through decades of overtime and sacrifice and dedication to providing for his family. But Sarah's new lawyer found legal loopholes I never knew existed, argued that my pension represented marital assets that could be redistributed based on post-divorce family obligations, presented Marcus's 3 children as innocent victims who deserved stability and support from the woman who had chosen to become their stepmother, painted my desire to keep my retirement funds as selfish and vindictive behavior that prioritized my individual comfort over children's welfare. The judge agreed, ruling that since Sarah had taken on the responsibility of caring for Marcus's children, my pension could be redirected to support that noble effort. And I was too broken and too trusting and too exhausted from months of legal battles to understand the full implications of the decision until it was too late, until the money was gone and Marcus's child support obligations were satisfied, and I was left with nothing but my Social Security benefits and the growing realization that I had funded another man's responsibilities while my own children believed I had abandoned them. My health started failing almost immediately after the divorce was finalized. The stress and shock and financial pressure triggering a series of medical problems that began with high blood pressure and escalated into the stroke that left me partially disabled and unable to work the demanding engineering jobs that had once given my life purpose and meaning. I moved into a small apartment in a rundown complex where the air conditioning barely worked and the neighbors played music too loud, and every day was a struggle to afford groceries and medications and the basic necessities of survival, while Sarah and Marcus lived in the house I had bought and renovated, and filled with memories of the family I thought I was building for the future. My children visited occasionally, awkward and duty-bound encounters where they made polite conversation and left as quickly as possible, clearly uncomfortable with my reduced circumstances and unwilling to hear my side of the story about the marriage and the divorce and the financial arrangements that had left me impoverished while their mother thrived. The stroke happened on a Tuesday morning while I was trying to fix the broken sink in my apartment. The sudden pain in my head like lightning striking behind my eyes, followed by the terrifying realization that I couldn't move my right arm or form words properly, followed by the ambulance ride and the hospital stay, and the slow, painful process of learning to walk and talk and function again with a body that no longer obeyed my commands. The rehabilitation was expensive and exhausting. Insurance covered only the basic necessities, and I spent months relearning how to write and speak and perform the simple tasks that had once been automatic, while Sarah visited once with flowers and false concern, and news about how well she and Marcus were doing, how his children were adjusting beautifully to their new family situation, how grateful they all were for the financial stability that allowed them to focus on healing and growth rather than survival. I spent my final years in a state care facility where the food was bland and the staff was overworked, and I shared a room with 3 other men who had also outlived their usefulness to families who had moved on without them, where every day was a countdown toward death that felt both terrifying and merciful, where I had too much time to think about the choices I had made and the people I had trusted and the life I could have lived if I had been smart enough to protect myself instead of sacrificing everything for people who saw my generosity as weakness rather than love. Sarah visited twice in those final months, both times bringing Marcus and his youngest child, both times making it clear that she was performing a duty rather than expressing genuine concern, both times leaving me with the bitter knowledge that my life's work had funded their happiness, while I died alone and forgotten in a place that smelled of disinfectant and despair. The end came quietly on a Thursday evening while I was watching the sunset through the window of my shared room. My roommates sleeping or watching television, my breathing shallow and labored from the lung problems that had developed after the stroke, my mind clear enough to understand that I was dying, but too tired to feel anything but relief, that the suffering would finally end. My last thoughts were about the choices I would make differently if I could live my life again, about the strength I would find to choose myself instead of sacrificing everything for people who didn't appreciate the sacrifice, about the love I would seek from someone who valued my dedication rather than exploiting it, about the family I would build with someone who saw partnership as mutual support rather than one-sided provision. I thought about Emma Rodriguez, the brilliant structural engineer who had worked with me for years and who had always treated me with respect and friendship and professional admiration, who had tried to warn me about Sarah's behavior in gentle, subtle ways that I was too blind to recognize, who had been at my side during some of the most challenging projects of my career, and who I had never considered as anything more than a colleague because I was committed to my marriage and my family, even when they were no longer committed to me. I thought about the conversations we'd had about engineering principles and project management and life philosophy, about the way she laughed at my jokes and asked thoughtful questions about my work, and seemed genuinely interested in my ideas and opinions, about the way she had looked sad and concerned when she heard about my divorce and my health problems, but had respected my privacy too much to intrude with unwanted advice or sympathy. If I could do it all again, I whispered into the darkening room where machines beeped and monitors glowed, and my life slowly ebbed away like water through a broken dam. I would choose myself first. I would protect what I built. I would find someone who loved me enough to build something together instead of taking everything I had to give to someone else. The words felt like a prayer or a promise, or a final declaration of the wisdom that had come too late to save me. And then darkness closed around me like a blanket, and I felt my heart stop beating and my breathing cease, and everything that had been David Chen faded into nothing but regret and the desperate wish for a second chance that would never come. Then I opened my eyes and realized I had been reborn. I'm 35 again, sitting in my old kitchen with its yellow wallpaper and the coffee maker that Sarah bought for my birthday 3 years ago. And my body feels strong and healthy and free from the pain that had become my constant companion in those final years. My right side moving normally, and my speech clear, and my mind sharp with the devastating knowledge of everything that's going to happen if I don't change the course of my life immediately and completely. The digital clock on the microwave shows 11:47 p.m. on March 15th. And I know with absolute certainty that Sarah will walk through the front door in exactly 13 minutes with the lie that she's been working an emergency shift at the hospital, when in reality she's been at Marcus's apartment planning the strategy that will eventually destroy my life and steal my future and leave me dying alone in a state facility while they live comfortably on my life's work. This is the moment when everything began to go wrong in my previous life. The night when I chose to believe Sarah's explanation instead of trusting my instincts. When I decided that questioning my wife's story would make me a paranoid and controlling husband, rather than a man protecting himself from betrayal. When I made the first in a series of choices that prioritized other people's comfort over my own survival and well-being. I remember how I reacted the first time, how I stayed up waiting for her with worry gnawing at my stomach, how I greeted her with relief and concern and gentle questions about her difficult shift, how I offered to make her tea and run her a bath, and listened to her elaborate story about the emergency surgery that had kept her at the hospital until nearly midnight, how I accepted her explanation without question because I loved her and trusted her, and couldn't imagine that the woman I had built my life with was actively planning to tear it down. But now I know the truth about that night and every night that followed. Now I understand the elaborate web of lies and manipulation that Sarah wove around my dedication and my love and my willingness to sacrifice for my family. Now I can see the pattern of behavior that led inevitably to the divorce and the pension theft and the years of suffering that ended with my lonely death in a care facility. The knowledge burns through me like acid, painful and clarifying, and I realize that I have been given the gift of perfect hindsight, combined with the opportunity to make completely different choices, to protect myself and my assets and my future from the people who would destroy them, to choose self-preservation over self-sacrifice, and find the happiness that was stolen from me in my previous life. I hear Sarah's key in the front door, and my heart rate spikes with adrenaline and fury and the strange calm that comes from knowing exactly what someone is going to say before they say it, from understanding the full scope of their deception, and having the power to respond with knowledge instead of blind trust. She comes into the kitchen with her scrubs slightly wrinkled, and her hair pulled back in the messy bun that she always wore after spending time with Marcus, and she starts to speak with the expression of exhaustion and stress that I now know was completely fabricated. But this time I don't react with concern and questions and offers of comfort. This time I watch her with the steady gaze of someone who knows exactly what game is being played and refuses to be manipulated by it. "Rough night at the hospital?" I ask, in a tone that's perfectly neutral and calm, and I see the surprise flash across her face because this isn't how I responded the first time. This isn't the worried husband who stayed up waiting and immediately began fussing over her comfort and well-being. "Emergency surgery," she says, her voice carrying just the right note of weariness and professional dedication. "We lost the patient. Dr. Morrison is devastated. Marcus and I stayed late to help with the family notification and paperwork." The mention of Marcus's name doesn't trigger the spike of jealousy and insecurity it did in my previous life, because now I know that she's testing my reaction, looking for signs that I suspect something, preparing to adjust her story based on my response. "That's terrible," I say, still watching her face with the kind of attention I used to reserve for engineering problems that required precise analysis and careful consideration of all variables. Marcus seems like a caring colleague. I'm sure the family appreciated having both of you there for support. I see her relax slightly at my apparent acceptance of her story, at my willingness to acknowledge Marcus as nothing more than a professional associate, at my failure to ask the probing questions that might expose the holes in her fabricated timeline. But inside my mind, I'm making mental notes about every detail of her deception, cataloging the lies for the evidence file I'm going to build, beginning the strategic process that will protect my assets and my future from the woman who is planning to steal them. I'm going to shower and go to bed, Sarah says, moving toward the stairs with the kind of casual intimacy that comes from 15 years of marriage. Don't wait up for me. I know you have that early meeting with the Henderson project team tomorrow. She's right about the meeting, but wrong about everything else. And as I watch her disappear up the stairs, I'm already making mental lists of the actions I need to take immediately to protect myself from the destruction I know is coming. I need to document everything about tonight. I need to start keeping detailed records of Sarah's schedule and behavior and explanations. I need to begin the process of protecting my pension and my assets and my financial future from the legal strategies that will be used against me in 3 years when she files for divorce. The next morning, I wake up with a clarity and purpose that I never had in my previous life, with the devastating knowledge of exactly how my trust and generosity will be used against me if I don't take immediate action to protect myself from the people who see my love as weakness rather than strength. I call in sick to work for the first time in 6 years and drive to the office of Patricia Williams, the divorce attorney whose name I remember from a conversation with a colleague whose marriage had ended badly, and I explained that I need advice about protecting assets in the event of divorce without actually filing for divorce, about creating legal safeguards that will prevent my spouse from accessing my retirement accounts and pension funds if our marriage fails. Patricia listens to my concerns with the kind of professional attention that comes from years of helping people navigate the destruction of their most important relationships, and she explains the legal strategies available to someone who wants to protect individual assets while remaining married, the trust structures and financial arrangements that can shield retirement funds from divorce proceedings, the documentation and evidence gathering that would be necessary to prove financial misconduct if divorce becomes inevitable. "Are you planning to file for divorce, Mr. Chen?" she asks. And I tell her honestly that I hope it won't come to that I love my wife and want to save my marriage, but that I've become aware of some concerning financial behavior that makes me want to protect the retirement savings I've spent decades building. She helps me establish irrevocable trusts that will protect my pension and retirement accounts from being classified as marital assets, legal structures that ensure my life's work can't be redistributed to support anyone else's obligations or responsibilities, financial safeguards that will allow me to provide for my own future regardless of what happens to my marriage. The process takes several weeks and requires careful documentation of the timing and reasoning behind each decision, but Patricia assures me that everything we're doing is completely legal and appropriate for someone who wants to protect individually earned assets from potential future claims. While I'm building legal protections for my financial future, I'm also beginning the painful process of gathering evidence about Sarah's relationship with Marcus, hiring a private investigator named Robert Kim, whose services Patricia recommended, a former police detective who specializes in documenting extramarital affairs for divorce proceedings. Robert's work is thorough and professional and devastating in its completeness, providing photographs and timestamps and detailed reports that document every meeting, every dinner, every overnight stay at Marcus's apartment, every lie Sarah tells about working late or attending professional development sessions or helping colleagues with family emergencies. The evidence file grows thicker every week, filled with documentation that reveals the full scope of Sarah's deception and planning, her coordination with Marcus to present their relationship as a professional friendship while secretly building the foundation for their future together, their discussions about finances and child support, and the legal strategies they would use to access my pension funds when the time came for divorce. Robert's investigation also reveals the full extent of Marcus's financial problems, his significant child support obligations to 3 different women, his poor credit history and mounting debts, his pattern of entering relationships with financially stable women who could help support his existing obligations and responsibilities. Robert's reports paint a picture of Marcus as a serial opportunist who has perfected the art of finding vulnerable women to support his lifestyle and his children from previous relationships. Women who mistake his charm and his sob stories about difficult ex-wives for genuine emotional connection rather than calculated manipulation designed to secure financial support. The first woman, Jennifer Walsh, worked as a teacher and supported Marcus and his first child for 3 years before discovering that he was simultaneously dating 2 other women and lying about his employment status, leaving her financially devastated and emotionally broken when she finally found the courage to end the relationship. The second woman, Maria Santos, was a successful accountant who paid Marcus's rent and car payments and provided stability for his second child until she discovered that he had been stealing money from her business accounts to fund gambling debts he had hidden from her. And the third woman, Ashley Thompson, was a nurse like Sarah who supported Marcus and his third child until she realized that he was planning to leave her as soon as he found someone with better financial prospects. Each of these women followed the same pattern: initial attraction to Marcus's charm and his apparent dedication to his children, gradual assumption of financial responsibility for his obligations and expenses, discovery of his deception and financial irresponsibility, and eventual abandonment when they either couldn't provide more money or when he found a better financial opportunity. Robert's investigation reveals that Marcus researched each woman's financial situation carefully before beginning romantic relationships with them, targeting women with stable incomes and assets that could be accessed to support his lifestyle and his child support obligations, presenting himself as a devoted father who had been victimized by vindictive ex-wives rather than as someone who consistently abandoned financial responsibilities when they became inconvenient. The recorded conversations between Sarah and Marcus are particularly devastating because they reveal the calculated nature of their planning and their complete lack of concern for my welfare or my rights to the pension I had spent decades building. In one conversation recorded at a restaurant where they thought they had privacy, Marcus explains his research into pension distribution laws and his discovery that divorce courts could redirect retirement funds to support dependent children under certain circumstances, and Sarah responds with excitement about the possibility of using my life's work to solve Marcus's financial problems while providing stability for his 3 children from other women. They discuss timelines and legal strategies and the best ways to present their case to divorce courts. Treating my financial destruction as a problem-solving exercise rather than a devastating betrayal of someone who had loved and supported one of them for 15 years. Another recorded conversation captures Sarah practicing the emotional manipulation tactics she plans to use during divorce proceedings, rehearsing her story about being an emotionally neglected wife who deserves compensation for years of supporting an absent workaholic husband, coordinating with Marcus to present their relationship as a source of healing and stability rather than an affair that destroyed a marriage built on trust and mutual support. They laugh about my naive trust and my dedication to my work, dismissing my feelings and my welfare as irrelevant obstacles to overcome in pursuit of their shared financial goals, talking about me like I'm a resource to be exploited rather than a human being whose life they're planning to destroy for their mutual benefit. The most damaging evidence comes from recorded conversations between Sarah and Marcus that Robert captures using legal surveillance techniques, discussions about their timeline for ending my marriage and beginning their life together. About the legal research Sarah has done regarding pension distribution in divorce proceedings, about Marcus's relief that he won't have to worry about child support payments once Sarah gains access to my retirement funds. Listening to these recordings is like being stabbed repeatedly in the chest. Hearing the woman I love describe me as a convenient source of funding for her real relationship. Hearing her dismiss my feelings and my welfare as irrelevant obstacles to overcome in pursuit of her happiness with another man. But the pain of discovering the full truth about Sarah's betrayal is balanced by the satisfaction of knowing that I'm building an unassailable case that will protect my future and ensure that my life's work benefits me, rather than funding Marcus's irresponsible reproductive choices and Sarah's selfish pursuit of a relationship built on my financial foundation. I continue to behave normally at home, asking casual questions about Sarah's work and listening to her elaborate lies with apparent interest and concern, but every conversation is now evidence-gathering rather than genuine communication. Every interaction is strategic rather than intimate. Every day brings me closer to the moment when I'll reveal everything I know and take control of my own destiny. The confrontation comes exactly 3 years after Sarah filed for divorce in my previous life. But this time the circumstances are completely different because I'm the one controlling the timeline and the setting and the presentation of evidence rather than being blindsided by legal papers and manipulation tactics designed to make me feel guilty about the failure of our marriage. I arrange for a family dinner at our house, inviting Sarah's parents and my own parents and our 2 children, ostensibly to celebrate our wedding anniversary, but actually to create the perfect audience for revealing the truth about Sarah's affair and her plans to steal my pension for Marcus's benefit. I also invite Emma Rodriguez, explaining to Sarah that I want our families to meet the colleague who's been such an important part of my professional life. And Sarah agrees readily because she's focused on maintaining appearances of marital stability until she's ready to execute her divorce strategy. Emma arrives early and helps me set up the dining room, her presence calm and supportive, in a way that reminds me why I valued her friendship even when I was too committed to my marriage to consider the possibility that she might offer something deeper and more authentic than what I had with Sarah. When everyone is seated around the table and the initial pleasantries have been exchanged, I stand up with a glass of wine and begin what sounds like a traditional anniversary toast, but gradually becomes something much more devastating and revelatory. 15 years ago, I married the woman I thought I would spend my life with, I begin, my voice steady and clear and carrying the kind of authority that comes from absolute certainty about what you're saying. I promised to love and honor and support her through whatever challenges life might bring, and I've kept that promise even when it became clear that she had made very different promises to someone else. I see Sarah's face change as she realizes this isn't going according to her script, that I'm not the naive and trusting husband she's been manipulating for months, that somehow I've discovered the truth about her relationship with Marcus and her plans for our future. "David, what are you talking about?" she asks, but her voice carries a note of panic rather than genuine confusion, and everyone at the table can hear the difference between real surprise and performed innocence. I pull out the first folder of evidence that Robert compiled. Photographs of Sarah and Marcus together at restaurants and hotels and his apartment. Time-stamped images that correspond exactly with nights when she claimed to be working emergency shifts or attending professional development sessions. "I'm talking about your relationship with Marcus Delacroix," I say, placing the photographs on the table where everyone can see them. "And your plan to divorce me and use my pension funds to support his 3 children from his previous relationships, and your belief that my 27 years of work and sacrifice should fund your new family's financial stability." The silence that follows is deafening. broken only by my mother's sharp intake of breath and my father's muttered curse, and Sarah's children staring at their mother with expressions of shock and betrayal that mirror what I felt when I first discovered her deception. Sarah tries to recover, claiming that the photographs are taken out of context, that her relationship with Marcus is purely professional, that I'm having some kind of breakdown or paranoid episode that's making me imagine conspiracies that don't exist. But her explanations sound hollow and desperate when confronted with the overwhelming evidence of her systematic deception. I produced the second folder, containing detailed financial records that show Marcus's child support obligations and his poor credit history and his pattern of financial irresponsibility, along with legal documents that Patricia helped me create to protect my pension and retirement accounts from being classified as marital assets subject to redistribution. I've also discovered that Marcus owes over $40,000 in back child support to 3 different women. I continue, my voice growing stronger as I watch Sarah's carefully constructed narrative crumble in front of our families. And that you've been researching legal strategies to access my pension funds to help him meet those obligations, essentially making me responsible for supporting children I've never met, whose father has a history of abandoning his financial responsibilities. The confrontation escalates quickly as Sarah realizes that her plans have been completely exposed and that I've taken legal steps to protect myself from the financial destruction she was planning. And she transitions from denial to anger to desperate attempts at emotional manipulation, claiming that I've violated her privacy and destroyed our marriage through paranoid surveillance and controlling behavior. But the evidence is too comprehensive and the documentation too thorough for her arguments to have any impact on our families or our children, who can see clearly that she's been living a double life while planning to betray the man who has supported her for 15 years. Our son, Michael, now 22 and finishing college, looks at his mother with an expression of disappointment and disgust that I remember from my previous life. Except this time it's directed at her rather than at me. This time he understands that I'm the victim of deception rather than the perpetrator of abandonment. "Mom, how could you do this to Dad?" he asks, his voice breaking with the kind of pain that comes from discovering that someone you trusted has been lying to you for months or years. He's worked so hard to give us everything we needed. He's been nothing but loyal and supportive, and you've been planning to steal his retirement money for some guy's kids from other relationships? Our daughter Jennifer, 19, and home from her sophomore year at college, is crying openly as she looks at the photographs and documents spread across the table, evidence of her mother's betrayal and her father's careful preparation for the legal battle that will determine the rest of his life. "I can't believe you were going to let Dad lose everything he worked for," she says to Sarah, her voice filled with the kind of moral clarity that young people possess before life teaches them to accept compromise and deception as normal parts of adult relationships. "I can't believe you were going to make him support some other man's children while telling us that he abandoned our family." The dinner ends with Sarah leaving the house in tears and rage, claiming that she's the victim of an elaborate setup designed to humiliate her in front of our families. But everyone at the table can see that she's been caught in a web of lies and manipulation that she constructed herself through months of careful deception and planning. My parents and Sarah's parents are shocked and supportive, expressing gratitude that I discovered the truth before it was too late to protect myself, offering help with legal expenses and emotional support through what they now understand will be a difficult divorce process. Emma stays after everyone else leaves, helping me clean up the dishes and put away the evidence folders, her presence steady and comforting in a way that reminds me why I've always valued her friendship and professional partnership. "I'm sorry you had to go through this," she says as we work together in the kitchen, where I've shared so many meals and conversations with Sarah over the years. "But I'm glad you found out before she could follow through with her plans. I'm glad you protected yourself and your future." We talk for hours about the evidence-gathering process and the legal strategies Patricia recommended, and the emotional impact of discovering that someone you love has been systematically betraying you while planning to steal your life's work for another man's benefit. The divorce proceedings are swift and decisive because Sarah's lawyers have no defense against the comprehensive evidence Robert compiled and no legal arguments that can overcome the trust structures Patricia created to protect my pension and retirement accounts. Sarah tries to claim that my asset protection strategies constitute financial abuse and controlling behavior, but the courts recognize that I was defending myself against planned theft rather than engaging in manipulative financial control, that her documented plans to use my pension for Marcus's child support obligations justify the legal safeguards I implemented to protect my individual assets. The final settlement gives Sarah half of our marital assets accumulated during the marriage, but excludes my pension and retirement accounts and the consulting business I started during the evidence-gathering phase, ensuring that my life's work remains mine to control and benefit from, rather than becoming a funding source for Marcus's irresponsible reproductive choices. My children choose to live with me primarily, visiting their mother occasionally, but making it clear that they've lost respect for her choices and her willingness to betray their father for financial gain, that they understand the difference between the parent who sacrificed for the family and the parent who was willing to destroy the family for personal benefit. Sarah and Marcus struggle financially after the divorce, with Marcus eventually leaving her for another woman when he realizes that she can't provide the financial support he was counting on, leaving Sarah to work multiple jobs while supporting the children she had taken on as part of her relationship with him. She tries to reconcile with me several times over the following months, claiming that she made mistakes but still loves me and wants to rebuild our marriage. But I reject her attempts at reconciliation firmly but kindly, explaining that the trust once broken cannot be rebuilt and that I've moved on to build a life with someone who values partnership over exploitation. That someone is Emma Rodriguez, whose friendship and professional respect gradually transforms into the kind of love that's built on mutual admiration and shared values, rather than financial dependency and emotional manipulation. Emma has her own successful engineering career and her own financial independence. She's interested in building something together rather than taking what I've already built. She values my intelligence and dedication, rather than seeing them as resources to be exploited for someone else's benefit. Our relationship develops slowly and carefully, built on the foundation of years of professional partnership and personal friendship, growing into the kind of mature love that's based on choosing each other rather than needing each other. We married 2 years after my divorce from Sarah, in a small ceremony attended by our families and close friends, including my children who have grown to love and respect Emma as much as I do, who see her as the partner their father deserves rather than a replacement for their mother. Our marriage is everything my first marriage wasn't: equal partnership, mutual support, shared goals, and the kind of deep intimacy that comes from knowing that someone loves you for who you are, rather than what you can provide for them. The wedding itself reflects the authentic nature of our relationship, a celebration of two people who choose to build something together rather than one person sacrificing for another's benefit, a ceremony that focuses on commitment and partnership rather than financial arrangements and social expectations. Emma designs our wedding rings using engineering principles that create interlocking patterns representing the way our professional collaboration strengthened our personal bond, and my children give speeches about how Emma helped their father rediscover happiness and confidence after years of manipulation and betrayal. Sarah's absence from the ceremony is noted but not mourned, her former role in my life replaced by someone who values what I offer rather than exploiting it for someone else's benefit. Our honeymoon combines business and pleasure as we travel to several cities where we're consulting on major engineering projects, working together during the day on complex structural problems, and exploring new places together in the evenings, our professional partnership enhancing our romantic relationship rather than competing with it. Emma brings fresh perspectives to engineering challenges that I've struggled with for years, her insights and creativity helping me solve problems more efficiently and effectively than I ever managed working alone. And I bring experience and technical knowledge that helps her tackle larger and more complex projects than she could handle independently. We're building something together that's greater than the sum of our individual capabilities, a personal and professional partnership that makes both of us stronger and more successful than we could be apart. My consulting business thrives with Emma's support and partnership, our combined expertise allowing us to take on larger and more complex projects than either of us could handle alone, our professional collaboration strengthening our personal relationship rather than competing with it. We established Chen Rodriguez Engineering Consultants as a formal partnership that reflects our equal contribution to the business, with Emma bringing her structural engineering expertise and client development skills, while I contribute my mechanical engineering background and project management experience. Our first major joint project involves designing a sustainable manufacturing facility that requires both structural and mechanical engineering expertise, and the success of that project leads to a steady stream of clients who specifically seek out our collaborative approach to complex engineering challenges. Emma's approach to business partnership mirrors her approach to marriage: equal investment, shared decision-making, mutual support during challenging times, and celebration of successes that belong to both partners rather than individual achievements. She insists on contributing equally to our household expenses and mortgage payments despite my initial protests that I could afford to support both of us, explaining that financial independence is important to her sense of self-worth and that she wants our relationship to be built on choice rather than necessity. This approach to money and partnership is so different from my experience with Sarah that it takes months for me to fully trust that Emma genuinely wants to build something together, rather than taking what I've already built, that her love for me isn't dependent on my ability to provide financial security or solve her problems. We buy a beautiful house together, not because I'm providing for someone else's needs, but because we're building a life that reflects our shared values and dreams, and every decision we make is made together rather than imposed by one partner on the other. The house hunting process becomes an exercise in communication and compromise as we discuss our individual preferences and priorities while looking for a home that will work for both of us. And Emma's excitement about features like the home office space where we can work on projects together, and the large kitchen where we can cook meals for friends and family, shows me what it means to plan a future with someone who sees partnership as collaboration rather than dependency. The house we choose reflects our shared interests and our commitment to building something beautiful together, with space for both of our home offices, a workshop where we can build engineering models and prototypes, and guest rooms where my children and our extended families can stay when they visit. Emma takes charge of decorating and furnishing our shared spaces while respecting my desire to maintain personal items that represent my history and my individual identity, creating a home that feels like a genuine collaboration rather than one person imposing their preferences on the other's space. Every room in the house tells the story of two people who chose to combine their lives while maintaining their individual strengths and interests, who built something new together rather than one person absorbing into the other's existing life. My children visit us regularly and have begun referring to Emma as their stepmother, not because she's trying to replace Sarah, but because she's earned their love and respect through her treatment of their father and her genuine interest in their lives and their futures. Michael, now in graduate school for engineering, often calls Emma for advice about coursework and career planning, treating her as a mentor and role model whose success in a male-dominated field inspires his own professional aspirations. Jennifer, studying business administration, has started working as an intern at our consulting firm during summer breaks, learning about entrepreneurship and partnership from watching Emma and me collaborate on complex projects and business decisions. Both children have expressed gratitude for Emma's presence in my life, telling me that seeing their father happy and respected and valued has helped them understand what healthy relationships should look like, that watching us work together as equals has given them standards for their own future partnerships. They contrast Emma's support for my success with Sarah's exploitation of my dedication, noting that Emma makes me stronger and more confident, while Sarah made me vulnerable and insecure. That Emma encourages my professional growth, while Sarah saw my work as a resource to be redirected for her benefit. The difference between my two marriages becomes more apparent every day as I experience what it means to be truly loved and valued rather than just needed for what I can provide, to be seen as a partner rather than a provider, to build something beautiful with someone who contributes equally rather than taking what someone else has built through sacrifice and dedication. Emma and I make decisions together about everything from vacation destinations to business strategies to home improvements, with both of us contributing ideas and expertise and both of us taking responsibility for outcomes, and this approach to partnership creates intimacy and trust that I never experienced with Sarah despite 15 years of marriage and shared history. Sarah continues to struggle with the consequences of her choices, working as a nurse while trying to support Marcus's children on her own after he abandoned her for his next financial opportunity, occasionally reaching out to mutual friends to ask about my well-being and success, but never again attempting direct contact with me or my children. I feel no satisfaction in her difficulties, only relief that I escaped the destruction she had planned for me, and gratitude for the second chance that allowed me to choose myself over sacrifice, partnership over exploitation, genuine love over manipulative dependency. I often think about the man I was in my previous life, about the naive trust and willingness to sacrifice that made me vulnerable to Sarah's manipulation and Marcus's greed, about the years of suffering and poverty and loneliness that ended with my death in a state care facility while they lived comfortably on my life's work. That man died alone and forgotten because he believed that love meant giving everything you had to people who saw generosity as weakness rather than strength, because he chose other people's comfort over his own survival, because he trusted people who saw his dedication as a resource to be exploited rather than a gift to be treasured. The transformation from that broken, trusting man to the person I am now represents more than just learning to protect my assets or detect deception. It represents a fundamental shift in understanding what love actually means and what kinds of relationships deserve my investment and commitment. In my previous life, I confused self-sacrifice with love, believing that the depth of my feelings could be measured by how much I was willing to give up for someone else's benefit, that proving my devotion meant accepting whatever treatment someone chose to give me in return. I thought that questioning Sarah's behavior or protecting my interests would make me selfish or controlling, that a good husband should trust completely and provide unconditionally, regardless of how that trust and provision were valued or used. But Emma has taught me that real love creates strength in both partners, rather than requiring one person to become weaker for the other's benefit. That healthy relationships involve mutual investment and mutual benefit, rather than one-sided sacrifice and exploitation. She shows me every day that someone who truly loves you wants you to be successful and secure and confident. That a genuine partner will contribute to your well-being rather than demanding that you diminish yourself for their comfort or convenience. The contrast between Sarah's approach to our marriage and Emma's approach to our partnership has helped me understand that I wasn't loved by Sarah, I was used by her. That what I mistook for love was actually a carefully managed system of emotional manipulation designed to keep me providing for her needs while ignoring my own. The rebirth gave me more than just a second chance to protect my pension and avoid financial destruction. It gave me the wisdom to recognize the difference between people who want to build something beautiful together and people who want to take what someone else has already built through their own hard work and sacrifice. I learned to distinguish between partners who see relationship challenges as problems to solve together and partners who see their partner's resources as solutions to problems they've created with other people. I discovered that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is being chosen against by people who prioritize their own interests while demanding that you sacrifice yours. The legal strategies that Patricia helped me implement protected more than just my financial assets. They protected my ability to make choices about my own future, to maintain control over the life I had built through decades of work and dedication and careful planning. The trust structures and asset protection arrangements ensured that my retirement savings would benefit me rather than funding Marcus's irresponsible reproductive choices, that my life's work would support my own future rather than being redirected to solve problems created by someone else's poor decisions and lack of accountability. But the most important protection came from learning to value myself enough to demand equal treatment in relationships, to expect partnership rather than accepting exploitation, to choose people who wanted to build with me rather than take from me. The evidence-gathering process that Robert conducted taught me that knowledge is power when dealing with people who depend on deception and manipulation to achieve their goals, that documenting the truth creates protection against people who would rewrite history to serve their interests. The recordings of Sarah and Marcus planning to steal my pension and discussing my welfare as an irrelevant obstacle to their financial goals provided legal protection during divorce proceedings. But they also provided emotional clarity about the kind of people I was dealing with and the necessity of protecting myself from their plans for my destruction. The confrontation at the family dinner accomplished more than just exposing Sarah's betrayal and protecting my assets. It demonstrated to my children and my extended family that I was strong enough to stand up for myself when necessary, that I valued myself enough to refuse being victimized by people who saw my kindness as weakness. The shock and disappointment on my children's faces when they saw the evidence of their mother's deception taught them important lessons about integrity and loyalty, and the difference between people who build relationships on trust and people who build relationships on exploitation and manipulation. My success in protecting my pension and building a new life with Emma has created ripple effects that extend beyond my personal happiness and financial security, inspiring other men in similar situations to take proactive steps to protect themselves from partners who see marriage as a financial opportunity rather than an emotional commitment. Several colleagues and friends have consulted with Patricia Williams after hearing about my experience, learning about asset protection strategies and legal safeguards that can prevent their life's work from being redirected to support obligations and relationships they never agreed to fund. The consulting business that Emma and I built together has become more successful than either of us could have achieved individually. Our combined expertise and collaborative approach attracting clients who value partnership and mutual respect in their professional relationships, just as we value those qualities in our personal relationship. Our business success reflects the principles that guide our marriage: equal investment, shared decision-making, mutual support during challenges, and celebration of achievements that belong to both partners rather than individual accomplishments. 3 years after my divorce from Sarah, I received news through mutual friends that Marcus had indeed left her for another woman, just as his pattern with previous relationships predicted he would do once Sarah could no longer provide the financial support he was seeking. She had struggled for months to support his 3 children on her nursing salary while he pursued his next financial opportunity, working multiple shifts and taking on additional responsibilities that left her exhausted and stressed and unable to maintain the lifestyle they had built using my pension funds. The poetic justice of Marcus abandoning Sarah after she had sacrificed her marriage and her integrity to support his financial obligations brought me no satisfaction. Only a sense of sadness for the woman she could have been if she had chosen partnership over exploitation, if she had valued what we built together rather than seeing it as a resource to be redirected for someone else's benefit. I felt no desire for revenge or vindication because my focus had shifted completely to building something beautiful with Emma rather than dwelling on the destruction that Sarah and Marcus had planned for me. Sarah's attempts to reconcile became more desperate after Marcus left her, with messages and phone calls expressing regret for her choices and pleading for another chance to rebuild our marriage, but I consistently declined her overtures not out of anger or bitterness, but out of the calm certainty that I had moved beyond the person I was when I trusted her with my future. The man who would have taken her back out of misplaced loyalty and naive hope no longer existed, replaced by someone who understood his own worth and refused to accept less than equal partnership in relationships. Emma and I have begun discussing starting a family of our own, approaching the decision with the same collaborative spirit that guides all our major life choices, both of us excited about the possibility of raising children who will see healthy partnership modeled in their daily lives. Our children will grow up understanding that love means mutual respect and equal investment, that healthy relationships make both people stronger rather than requiring one person to sacrifice for the other's benefit, that choosing yourself is not selfish when the alternative is being chosen against by people who prioritize their own interests over your welfare and well-being. The engineering projects we work on together often involve creating structures that must balance multiple forces and stresses while maintaining stability and functionality. And I've come to see our marriage as a similar kind of engineering challenge, building something beautiful and strong by ensuring that both partners contribute equally to supporting the structure, that neither person carries disproportionate weight or responsibility, that the foundation is solid enough to withstand external pressures and internal changes over time. Every morning when I wake up next to Emma in the house we bought together with money we both earned and decisions we both made, I'm reminded of the gift of the second chance I received and the wisdom to make different choices when that chance came. The rebirth didn't just give me the opportunity to protect my pension and avoid financial destruction. It gave me the knowledge and strength to choose myself when it mattered most, to demand equal treatment in relationships, to value myself enough to leave people who saw my love as weakness rather than gift. But I'm not that man anymore. I'm David Chen, who chose himself when it mattered most, who protected his life's work from people who would steal it, who found love with someone who values partnership over exploitation, who built a new life based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than one-sided sacrifice and emotional manipulation. I'm the man who learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish when other people are choosing themselves at your expense, that protecting your assets isn't greedy when other people are planning to steal them, that demanding equal partnership isn't controlling when the alternative is being controlled by people who see you as a means to their financial ends. The story of my rebirth and transformation has become a testament to the power of self-respect and the importance of protecting what you've built through honest work and dedication. A reminder that love should make you stronger rather than weaker. That partnership should involve mutual investment rather than one-sided sacrifice. That choosing yourself is not just acceptable, but necessary when dealing with people who would choose themselves at your expense. I learned that real strength comes not from how much you're willing to sacrifice for others, but from how clearly you can see when others are willing to sacrifice you for their own benefit, and how decisively you can act to protect yourself when that clarity comes. As Emma and I sit together in our living room on a quiet Sunday evening, reviewing the engineering plans for our latest project while discussing our vacation plans for next month, I realize that this is what happiness looks like. Two people who chose each other freely, who support each other's success rather than competing for resources, who build together rather than one person building while the other takes. This is the life I should have had from the beginning. The love I deserved, but was too naive to recognize. The partnership that was always possible if I had been strong enough to choose myself when it mattered most. My phone rings, and I see Sarah's number on the caller ID, her third attempt to contact me this month. Probably another desperate plea for financial help, or emotional reconciliation, or forgiveness for the betrayal that destroyed our marriage and nearly destroyed my life. I decline the call without listening to the voicemail. Not out of anger or bitterness, but out of the calm certainty that comes from knowing exactly where you belong, and who deserves your time and energy and love. Emma looks up from the engineering drawings spread across the coffee table and smiles at me with the kind of warmth and affection that comes from choosing someone because you want to build something beautiful together, not because you need them to solve your problems or fund your lifestyle or provide for obligations you've created with other people. "Everything okay?" she asks, and I tell her honestly that everything is perfect, that I've finally learned the difference between love and exploitation, between partnership and manipulation, between choosing yourself and being selfish. I supported my decision to choose myself, finally, and that choice gave me everything I had lost in my previous life. Financial security, genuine love, family relationships built on respect rather than guilt, professional success shared with someone who values collaboration over competition, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that I protected myself from people who would have destroyed me if I had continued to trust them with my future. This is what it means to be reborn. Not just getting a second chance, but having the wisdom to make different choices when that chance comes. To value yourself enough to demand equal treatment. To love yourself enough to leave people who see your love as weakness rather than gift. The story ends not with revenge, but with the quiet triumph of a man who learned to protect what he had built, who found love with someone who wanted to build alongside him rather than take what he had already created, who chose partnership over sacrifice and discovered that real love makes both people stronger rather than requiring one person to be weakened for the other's benefit. I am David Chen, and I finally chose myself when it mattered most, and that choice made all the difference in the world.